I've swapped the types of every starter Pokemon up to Gen 9 over the past few years, using new type triangles and completely changing their concepts. So in this video, we get to answer the question, what if every starter Pokemon had new types? What if Game Freak had used a different type trio for the Kanto starter Pokemon? Hey everyone, Brandon here. So since the beginning of the franchise, the starter Pokemon have always been grass, fire, and water type. They form a great type triangle and are relatively balanced, but other type triangles exist. While they aren't as balanced, they could be used as type trios for the starter Pokemon. So to experiment with this idea, I'm going to use the Kanto starters as a base. If you like this idea and want to see more, make sure to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more content just like this. So the type trio I decided to use in this case is Ground, Ice, and Steel. Yes, I realize Steel didn't exist in the first generation of Pokemon, but this is all hypothetical and just for fun anyway. So let's just say this is an alternate universe where all the types are on the table. Also, all of the art in today's video was made by the incredible Trevenart, so make sure to go check them out. Starting us off is Bulbasaur, which I decided to give the Ice type. Grass and Ice are kind of opposites in a way, so I thought it would be interesting. So here is Bulbasaur. Since this is an alternate universe where the types were different, I figured the names should match the typing as well. Instead of a bulb, Bulbasaur has a big old iceberg on its back, hence its name. The iceberg extends below to coat its arms and body as well, which references how icebergs have more to them below the surface of the water. This icy coating is also a reference to the wood frog found across North America. These are the only frogs found in the Arctic Circle, due to their unique ability to freeze themselves over in the winter, producing a special form of antifreeze that prevents their cells from freezing. The space between the cells does become frozen though, so the wood frog gets this icy coating. When the weather gets warmer, they thaw and are able to continue feeding and mating just like normal. Bulbasaur inhabit the snowy peaks of Mount Silver. They are always trying to keep the iceberg on their back as tall as possible. It is said that the iceberg contains the very life force of this Pokemon, and if it were to melt, their life would melt away as well. At level 16, Bulbasaur evolves into Icysaur. See what I did there? As you can no doubt tell, Icysaur's iceberg is smaller than Bulbasaur, and now is more of an ice shelf. Its arms are no longer coated with ice, exposing more of the diamond pattern on its skin, though it still keeps these icy claws it can use to attack. I would give it a new move called Frost Claw to back this concept, which would be an ice-type version of moves like Dragon Claw or Metal Claw, but with a chance to freeze. Icysaur are much more aggressive than Bulbasaur and have a keen survival instinct. They are highly protective of the ice on their back and will use their claws to deliver chilling cuts to anyone that comes near them. These cuts will remain frozen. The sun or fire will not melt them. The only remedy is to seek medical attention such as an ice heal or Pokemon Center. At level 32, Icysaur evolves into Verglasaur, an ice ghost type. The ice on its back has melted, draining the life force of this Pokemon and thus turning it into a ghost type. The ice now coats its body in the shape of a snowflake to visually mimic Venusaur's leaves. If you haven't picked up on it already, this entire line is a reference to the melting polar ice caps. They are also a reference to wilderness survival. People like Mountain Men, Bear Grylls, and Leonardo DiCaprio in The Revenant all serve as inspiration here, which you can partly see in Verglasaur's little beard. Revenant is also a synonym for ghost, so that works out too. It now has horns as a sort of visual pun of a bull frog, but also refers to another group of frigid-bearded survivalists, Vikings. Verglasaur's name comes from verglass, which is the thin coating of ice caused by frozen over rain, just like the thin coating the wood frog has and Verglasaur has due to its melted ice. I wanted this whole line to conceptually oppose the Bulbasaur line. Where Bulbasaur's bulb grows into this beautiful plant by the final stage, Bulbasaur's iceberg melts into this sad remnant of what it once was. Verglasaur is said to haunt the frozen hills of the Kanto and Johto regions, seeking revenge on humans as it believes they are the reason its ice and life force are gone. One strike from its frozen claws will curse you, making you feel like you're always cold, no matter how warm your surroundings may be. Next, I decided to give Squirtle the ground type, so meet Desertal. There are plenty of desert inhabiting turtles I could have based this on, but I ultimately decided to base it on the Indian star tortoise, which lives in dry areas like semi-desert grasslands and sand dunes, but can live in humid areas as well. It is also based around cowboys. You can see the brown portion on the front of its shell emulates a bandana, and its little mud-caked hands look like gloves. The reason I picked the Indian star tortoise rather than other turtles is because of the star part of its name. Stars are the symbols for old-timey sheriff's badges, and the spurs of a cowboy boot look like the stars on the tortoise's back. Also, one little detail I wanted to point out is that the direction of the spiral on its tail is flipped from Squirtle. Desertal will bury themselves in sand and can shoot that sand out in high-speed bursts at prey passing by to stun them. Its hard, durable shell can withstand harsh sandstorms. If the storms get too bad, it can withdraw into its shell, letting itself be buried. At level 16, Desertal evolves into Waste Turtle. Elements of the Indian star tortoise and the cowboy inspiration start to become more factored in with this design. The folds on the front of its shell form a star, and though less noticeable, it has a star on its back. The ears, which is apparently what those wing-like things on War Turtle's head are, become more like extended eyebrows that, when combined with the shape of its head, form a cowboy hat. It keeps the bandana-like marking on its shell, and its tail is shaped like a whip, mixed with a little bit of fringe. Waste Turtle are always trying to prove their toughness. They will challenge Pokemon with a type advantage just to prove this. If the battle isn't going their way, they will whip sand stored in their tail into the eyes of their opponent, in an attempt to blind them and to get a cheap shot in. At level 36, Waste Turtle evolves into Dustoise, a ground dark type. This cowboy has gone rogue, turning into a full-on outlaw. The black and yellow coloration of the Indian star tortoise pairs wonderfully with the dark cowboy aesthetic I wanted for this design. Giving it a dark shell, face, and eyes with that pop of yellow really gives off that evil feeling, kind of like the DC villain Sinestro. Speaking of its dark face, you can see that its face, jaw, and head come together to look like a bandit hiding his face using a cowboy hat and bandana. Its middle toes are longer and slightly curved so they look like cowboy boots. You can definitely feel the intimidation factor, with Dustoise looking in your direction while pointing its finger and cannon at you, as if it's saying you're next. Dustoise shoots out large, precise, bullet-like clumps of sand from its cannons. One blast can break through solid steel. It rarely needs to use its cannons though, as most Pokemon run from fear based on its sheer presence alone. Of course, that leaves Charmander with the steel type. So here is Crowmander. Crowmander definitely feels the most different from the original in terms of design, with a more circular head, serious expression, confident pose, and a more slender body. Instead of a flame, it has a big ball of iron on its tail, which mimics an old ball and chain. Don't let its thinner appearance fool you though. Crowmander is tough. It can lift the heavy ball on its tail slightly off the ground and swing it around at opponents. Its tail is extremely sturdy and can crush solid rock. At level 16, Crowmander evolves into Chromeleon. Here is where its secondary inspiration starts to present itself. This line is also based on weightlifting. Chromeleon is curling the iron ball with its tail like the exercise of curling weights. Its shoulders are becoming more distinct and muscular, but they also look like curled up sleeves, which is typically what people do with their clothing if they're about to lift something seriously heavy. The segmentation of its arms make it look like it's wearing weightlifting gloves. It also has this little mustache, which I will explain the reasoning behind it once it evolves. Chromeleon can use their tail like a mace to knock out opponents, though they are less interested in battling and more so want to focus on making their body and tail stronger. At level 36, Chromeleon evolves into Chromazard, a steel fighting type. This lizard is juiced. Its body is thicker and more rounded to reflect how many weightlifters and powerlifters are typically less muscly than bodybuilders. I mean, some of the strongest men in the world are thick powerlifters like Mark Henry, Hafthor Bjornsson, and Zydrunas Savickas, just to name a few. Chromazard's mustache and leotard-like body pattern refer to old-timey circus strongmen, but more specifically one particular strongman, Louis Uni, also known as Apollon the Mighty, who was by far the strongest man alive back in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Chromazard's tail has transformed from Crowmander and Chromeleon's single iron bar into a big old dumbbell for it to lift. Its chest, while being a leotard, also looks like a big ball of iron. The symbols on its chest are meant to emulate the numbers on old barbells, where these numbers are instead 3 question marks, meaning it is so heavy it is impossible to tell its exact weight. This line's concept kind of acts as an opposite to the Charizard line. Where the Charizard line's tail is a source of weakness, the Chromazard line's tail acts as a source of strength. Chromazard's body is harder than diamond. The only thing that can pierce it is intense heat. It is constantly lifting heavy things to show off how strong it is. Like many starter trios, these 3 final stages have a group theme, which is things associated with being manly or macho, being able to live off the land, or wilderness survival, the Old West, or cowboys, and being able to lift heavy things, or weightlifting. And that's what a differently typed starter trio might look like. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Starter Pokemon have always been Grass, Fire, and Water type, but what if Game Freak had decided to use a different type trio instead? Hey everyone, Brandon here. A while back we gave the Kanto starters a new type trio. Check that video out if you missed it, after this one of course. So today we're going to tackle the Johto starters. We gave the Kanto starters the type trio of Ground, Ice, and Steel. I wanted to try to use as many unique type combinations as possible for these videos, so this time we're going to go with the type trio of Rock, Flying, and Fighting. If you want more videos like this, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so I know to make more. Also, all of the art in today's video was made by the incredible Elisteva076, so make sure to go check them out. Starting us off is how almost every regional dex begins, with the Grass starter. So for Chikorita, I decided to give it the Rock type. With it being based on a sauropod and the prehistoric-inspired fossil Pokemon typically having the Rock type, I figured it would be a good fit. But I wanted to take it a step further than that and take inspiration from a very striking rock I haven't seen featured in Pokemon yet, Lapis Lazuli. So first up is Lazarita. Just like last video, since this is an alternate universe situation, the names would obviously be different, but I wanted to keep some sense of familiarity, so I tried to keep the naming scheme similar to the originals. Anyway, rather than the leaf and buds, Lazarita instead has these stones and a vein of lapis, which are meant to reflect ancient Akkadian jewelry which prominently featured this semi-precious stone. Unlike most rock-type Pokemon, Lazarita actually prefer to be out of caves in the sunlight. The gold flecks in their stones shines a pleasant, uplifting light when hit by the sun. This references Lapis Lazuli's etymology, with its name coming from lapis, which in Latin means stone, and the Latin lazulum or the Arabic lazurd, meaning sky or heaven, which when combined loosely translates to the stone of heaven. At level 16, Lazarita evolves into Lapis. Like I said, I tried to keep the same naming scheme, so if some of these names sound like a bit of a stretch, that's why. In any case, the necklace and headpiece of Lazarita has evolved into these lapis bricks and head jewelry on Lapis. These bricks are representative of the lapis bricks that make up the Ishtar Gate, an enormous gate of lapis and gold that was constructed in the ancient city of Babylon and was dedicated to the goddess Ishtar, a goddess of love, war, and fertility. She is also known as the Queen of Heaven, which ties back into Lapis's heavenly etymology. The Chikorita line, and Bayleaf in particular, has always felt fairly feminine to me, especially with Ash's iconic Bayleaf in the anime being female. So, such a strong feminine goddess being tied to this concept felt like a perfect fit to me. The bricks around Lapis's neck will shed twice a year. These leftover bricks have been used since ancient times to build monuments to legendary Pokemon. Being inside one of these monuments makes you feel a connection to these great Pokemon. In this universe, the Brass Tower of Johto never burned down because it was made of Lapis bricks. At level 32, Lapis evolves into Megamorph. This Pokemon's draconic features and commanding presence take inspiration from a creature found upon the walls of the Ishtar Gate, the Mushusu. This mythical creature has the head, body, and tail of a snake, but with the front legs of a lion and the back legs of an eagle. While Megamorph doesn't exactly match that description, it has features of this beast such as the head crest and lengthy curly tail. The bricks around the neck of Lapis have fused together upon evolution to form a gateway, referencing the Ishtar Gate itself, but also sort of the gate around Arceus as well. Elisteva did a really great job of making this gate evoke the same feeling as the neck flower of Meganium. Megamorph's name is a play on metamorphic, which is the type of rock that Lapis Lazuli is. Great leaders of the past are said to have worn the crest of a Megamorph. Bearing the load of this heavy object was a sign of strength and leadership, and wearing this crest was rumored to allow you to commune with legendary Pokemon. Next up, we have the Cyndaquil line, which I decided to give the Flying type. I initially chose this type for this line because it was the last one left out of the trio when giving the other two their types, but as I went along and researched more, this concept really came together well. So here is Windaquil. That name just works way too well, and I am very proud of it. Replacing the fiery quills of Cyndaquil with feathers felt like such a natural fit to me, and Elisteva added in these two little whisker-like quills, which I think helped separate the design a little more from the original. Windaquil is actually based on a mythical creature from Mapuche mythology called the Colo Colo, which is described as a feathered rat-like creature. The feathers of Windaquil can change from soft to blade-like when it feels threatened. Being pricked by one of these feathers results in fatigue and sudden emotional outbursts. At level 17, Windaquil evolves into Quillwind. While its name might just sound like quill plus wind, it is actually a pun off the word tailwind, which in this pose you can see Quillwind riding on one. Upon evolution, the feathers have taken a pattern minorly resembling that of a Native American chief's headdress. Quillwind can perk up these feathers or flatten them, much like a cockatoo. They use them to help adjust their speed while gliding, and are known to do tricks and stunts while in the air to try to impress a potential mate. At level 36, Quillwind evolves into Typhlosion. Typhlosion already had Typhoon as a part of its name, so instead of explosion, I mixed in the Colo Colo. The Colo Colo inspiration doesn't stop there, as Typhlosion is also inspired by another famous Colo Colo. But instead of a feathered rat, this was a person that was a Toqui, or war leader of the Mapuche people during the Araucao War against Spanish conquistadors. The two feathers on its face are also inspired by Colo Colo's fellow vice Toqui, Lautaro, who is famously depicted with these two feathers upon his head. Since Typhlosion already has another form, I wanted to do something a bit different with Typhlosion's design to make it stand out. So rather than giving Typhlosion some kind of element around its neck, I opted to make the design more bottom heavy, which most porcupines actually look like with their quills anyway, and it also looks like the cape of Lautaro. Typhlosion can fly but prefer to stay on the ground, teaching Windaquill and Quillwind the lessons it has learned from its life experience, like the best places to fly, how to navigate certain air currents, and the like. Moving on to our final line, we have Totodile, which I opted to give the fighting type. With alligators and crocodiles being known for their powerful bite and their vicious ambush style of attack, I felt the fighting type would fit well on them. But for this line, I took specific inspiration from a big bad crocodile known for its aggression, the Nile crocodile. So with that said, here is Totodile. This isn't the cute, friendly, derpy Totodile you know and love. This guy has the aggro levels of a Paris in Legends Arceus, and will charge you if you get too close. As the Nile crocodile is named after the Nile River, which is most known for being associated with Egypt, we took the little eye mark that Totodile had and made it into the famous Egyptian eye. The yellow belly stripe that Totodile had is now a pattern that reflects bandages, but Elisteva managed to sneak in the symbol for the fighting type as well with its left fist. At level 18, Totodile evolves into Cairo, with its name coming from the capital of Egypt, Cairo. The bandages of Totodile have evolved into an armor-like appearance, and the new bandages around its tail were meant to bring to mind the famous mummies of Egypt, which mummified crocodiles have been discovered before. The bandage along its snout also refers to how young crocs have their jaws bandaged shut when they're being handled by zookeepers for demonstrative purposes. Chironal will strike swiftly out at prey, but if they miss, they will throw a temper tantrum, alerting other potential prey to its presence. At level 30, Chironal evolves into Feroligator. Yet another name that works way too well. The armor-like appearance of Chironal has become full-on armor for Feroligator. This refers to the crocodile's hardened hide, but also the Egyptian god Sobek, a god of crocodiles, pharaonic power, and military prowess, with those three things being cornerstones of this line's design. Those mummified crocs I mentioned earlier were actually thought to be offerings to Sobek, which you can see that Feroligator's tail still has the bandages on it, leading to a spiked tail. And if you look closely at the tail's shape, you can see it creates the visage of the pyramids of Giza. Feroligator is a master of ambush, able to strike with swift ferocity. It usually hides in the tall grass of Route 45, with that route's long river evoking that of the Nile. Just like the last video, I decided to give this group a new theme. Johto is a region steeped in history and has major themes of unity within its story and Pokemon. I mean, this region brought us the friendship mechanic after all. So, in Japanese history, there are three individuals known as the Unifiers of Japan: Ieyasu Tokugawa, Oda Nobunaga, and Toyotomi Hideyoshi. These three historical figures are actually found as characters in the game Pokemon Conquest, with Ieyasu using Steel and Rock types, Nobunaga using Rayquaza, which is partly Flying type, and Hideyoshi using Fire and Fighting types, so each of these starters represent them. But it doesn't end there. As you can no doubt tell, these Pokemon are all very much not Japanese in origin. Well, that is because they're actually inspired by three Unifiers from other countries. Megamorph is inspired by what is considered to be the first empire, the Akkadian Empire, and its ruler, King Sargon. His conquest of the Sumerian city-states unified this ancient Mesopotamian civilization. As I stated before, Typhlosion is based on a few Toqui, but Lautaro in particular was credited as the military leader who managed to bring together the Mapuche people and teach them the combat tactics they needed to become a successful unified army. And Feroligator is based on Narmer, who many scholars consider to be the unifier of Egypt and the pharaoh of its first dynasty. And as you may have noticed, none of these Pokemon have a secondary type. I considered making them all part dragon, as they all have a draconic appearance, and the Colo Colo is said to be part serpent in some tales, but I ultimately decided on keeping them single typed. And that's what a differently typed starter trio might look like. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Grass, Fire, and Water have been the de facto type trio for starter Pokemon since the very beginning. But what if that hadn't been the case? We have explored this concept using the Kanto and the Johto starters, so today we are moving on to the Hoenn starters. Maybe it is a bit of nostalgia bias talking, as my first Pokemon game was Sapphire, but these three are some of my absolute favorites. And if you want to be my favorite, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. It really does help. So to start us off, we have the Trico line, which I opted to give the Steel type. So allow me to introduce Zinco, the Metal Gecko Pokemon, who I worked with Trev and Art to create. I also worked with them on the rest of the designs for this video, so make sure to check them out, link is in the description. With Trico originally being based on the leaf-tailed gecko, I thought a clever way to play into that would be to reference Gold Leaf. Gold that has been hammered into extremely thin sheets that is used in the process of gilding. Some leaf-tailed geckos have this more gold coloration, which is simply gorgeous and plays well into our concept. We tried to mix in some more pointed features to help sell the steel typing as well, with Zinco's tail looking like a little dagger while still being a bit leaf-like. As with the previous videos, I tried to maintain parts of the original names of these evolution lines, or make them have a similar cadence. So Zinco is a mix of the metal zinc and gecko. While zinc is more silvery than gold, it still works as a metal and maintains that E sound from Trico. Zinco used their grass type-like appearance to trick types that are super effective against grass into attacking them. It will then use its razor-sharp tail to deliver a devastating counter. This tactic does not really work that well on fire types though. At level 16, Zinco evolves into Silvile, a steel fire type. Yes, I have finally mixed in a type from the original trio into one of these starters. Trust me, it fits the concept, isn't the Pokemon's original type, and if I limit myself to not using any of those types at all, what I can do with these starter type swaps becomes more limiting. Anyway, as Grovyle was the first to learn its formerly signature move, Leaf Blade, Silvile turns the blade part up to 11, having a pair of blades on its hands and tail, and one on its head. Silvile uses these blades in a weird series of movements that some have called a dance. A swords dance, if you will. This dance with danger and the shape of their blades are a reference to a form of Peruvian dance called Danza de las Tijeras, also known as the scissors dance. The dancer will do incredibly dexterous and expressive dance moves all the while holding scissors. These seemingly magical feats have led some to believe that the dancers have made some form of pact with the devil, calling them the dancer in the devil's house. Which leads us perfectly into Silvile's evolution, Coboltile, the wildfire Pokemon. So I've been kind of hiding a secret since we introduced Zinco. This line is based on a specific type of leaf-tailed gecko, one with devilish inclinations, called the Satanic leaf-tailed gecko. This demonic lizard was what I based this entire concept around. As this Pokemon evolves, you can see it descend into a hellish fiend, a demon lord, if you will. This descent to darkness not only reflects Satan being a fallen angel, but refers to Creep, which is not only a hit song by Radiohead, but in material science it refers to the deformation of a material over time due to long exposure to certain stresses. Stresses like heat, which is one of the most severe. Silvile's scissors become more like claws with Coboltile, and its tail, while emulating the tree from Sceptile, also looks like a weird, deformed blade, like the many oddly shaped blades of demons and devils across popular media. Coboltile's name comes from the element cobalt, which most people think of as blue, but as a metal is silvery. There is also a crystal known as aerithite, or red cobalt, as it is a cobalt arsenate mineral and is associated with silver, just like Silvile is with Coboltile. Its fire typing obviously refers to Hell's association with fire. And speaking of, Coboltile can superheat its blade-like claws, unleashing a powerful bitter blade. That power not only comes from its infernal design, but its ability, sharpness, which makes so much sense for this of all Pokemon to have, and would boost the damage and amount of HP drained by Bitter Blade, making this Pokemon a truly demonic force to be reckoned with. From there, we move on to a completely different note with Torchic, who I decided to give the Fairy type. So here is Archic, the chick Pokemon. This little cutie is inspired by the tale of Chicken Little, with its poofy cloud-like feathers looking like the clouds in the sky that Chicken Little believed was falling. The pattern on its face takes a note from the Sobble playbook and looks like tears. The little head feather will sometimes land on Archic's head, making it think that something fell on its head from the sky, subsequently making it panic and run around like a chicken with their head cut off. Or I guess in this case, a chicken with their head screwed on wrong? Either way, at level 16, Archic evolves into Ambroskin, the young bird Pokemon, a fairy flying type. Ambroskin has matured from its previous stage, beginning to find its way through the sky after acquiring its new larger and flight-capable wings. The poofy cloud-like elements of Archic have transformed into more of an outfit reminiscent of an 80s teenager, poofy jacket, scrunchie and all, referencing coming-of-age movies like Pretty in Pink, The Breakfast Club, and 16 Candles. Man, Molly Ringwald really had a chokehold on 80s teen movies. and the color pink. Anyway, this all comes together in Ambroskin being the teen stage of evolution, but the white aspects of this design also refer to doves, which are typically a sign of peace, freedom, and love, like the innocence before becoming an adult. Speaking of, at level 36, Ambroskin evolves into Blaziken, the Sky Pokemon. Now that we've reached the final stage of this line, I guess it's about time I explain the names, huh? They all take a portion from something celestial or heavenly. Archik comes from Archangel, Blaziken comes from Heavenly Bliss, and Ambroskin comes from Ambrosia, said to be a mythical food or drink of the Greek gods, which confers immortality to them. It was also brought to the gods by doves. As you can no doubt tell, Blaziken is based on an angel, but more specifically celestials from Dungeons & Dragons. As you can see, Blaziken adopts some of those more gold elements from this race of heavenly beings. It also kind of came out looking like the White Ranger from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which wasn't intentional, but as an MMPR fan, I will take it. Rest in peace, JDF. Reaching its full potential, Blaziken now protects the skies and its inhabitants. So if the sky were to ever fall, it would be right there to stop it. It will use its signature move Celestial Strike to take down those who stand in its way. A base 90 special move that does fairy and flying damage calculated pretty much exactly how Flying Press does. Cloud9 feels like a fitting ability for this Pokemon given its lore and inspiration, but I could also see Serene Grace working too. Well, I know you like Mudkips, first I wanted to talk about the type I picked for it. With Kanto, we did the Ice Steel Ground type trio, and with Johto, we did the Flying Rock Fighting trio. So for Hoenn, I wanted to do something a bit different and use an incomplete type triangle. 3 types that have some connection to each other, but isn't necessarily a perfect matchup of strengths and weaknesses. So for Mudkip, I picked the Dragon type. Steel resists it, and Fairy is super effective against it. But Dragon also resists Cobaltile's partial fire typing, and I have another trick up my sleeve for this line. Anyway, with all this said, here is Lindkip, the dragonfish Pokemon. This adorable fellow is based on a type of fish called the Senegal Bichir, also known as the dragonfish. They are incredibly reminiscent of the types of fish Mudkip was based on, and with a name like that, it was a definite must to base Lindkip on it. Lindkip's name comes from Lindworm, a type of serpentine dragon usually depicted with 2 arms in the front and no legs. Despite being purely dragon type, Lindkip spend most of their time in the waters of swamps and marshes. And while we're on the topic of marshes, at level 16, Lindkip evolves into Marshtier, a dragon poison type. I told you I had a trick up my sleeve. Poison is of course strong against fairy types, but steel is immune to it. Unless this line had corrosion as an ability, which it does. I also did something a bit different with the naming here. Usually I replace the element of the name of the Pokemon, like Torchic to Archik or Trico to Zinco, but for this one, the marsh part of its name already fits the swamp dwelling concept super well. The tier part of its name comes from another kind of dragon, the Amphitheer or Amphitheer, which is another type of serpentine dragon, but instead this one has wing arms. Marshtier build up poison in their bright purple stomach by eating the local flora and fauna in their boggy home. They tend to keep to themselves as they are quite foul-smelling to other Pokemon. He's just a stinky little guy, who becomes a big stinky guy at level 36 when it evolves into Swampent. Now at the final stage, it actually becomes a Lindworm. Legs? Where we're going, we don't need legs. Its type, dark green coloration, and swamp habitat are meant to reference 2 types of dragons found within D&D. The toxic green dragons and the sinister, lonesome, marsh-dwelling black dragons. Both are capable of expelling some form of toxic breath. One poison gas and the other acid. There is also such a dragon found within French myth called the Guiver, a dragon-like serpent that possesses venomous breath. That noxious odor from Marshtier has developed into Swampent's breath, which is toxic enough to severely poison even the toughest Steel-type Pokemon. This is actually their signature move, Toxic Breath, a base 80 special Poison-type move with a 20% chance to badly poison the target. Move over, Naganadel and Dragalge, we've got a new Dragon Poison type to reign supreme. The group theme may have been a bit more obvious than others in this series. They represent different realms outside the Terrestrial Realm, aka our realm. The Infernal Realm, aka Hell with Cobaltile, the Celestial Realm, aka Heaven with Blaziken, and the Realm of Magic with Swampent, though it could also refer to the D&D Terrestrial Realm as you can find dragons there, which is pretty much the same thing as the Magical Realm though. There was also a more subtle group theme of gold throughout these designs, with the Zinco line representing yellow gold, the Archik line representing white or rose gold, while also having some yellow gold elements, and the Lindkip line being dragons that hoard gold. They could also represent black gold, aka oil, being a toxic substance to animals much like that line is to Pokemon. Another small thing I did was swap around the fan-theorized themes for these starters. Cobaltile having blades or scissors as a weapon theme like the water starters were thought to, Swampent being a dragon like the Chinese Zodiac Firestarter theory, and Blaziken being based on an extinct animal. mammal, the Archaeopteryx. Which I know is a bit of a cop-out given birds are descended directly from dinosaurs, but it still works. And that's what a differently typed starter trio might look like. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Starter Pokemon have always been grass, fire, and water type by default. But what if that wasn't the case? What if Game Freak had chosen one of the many other type triangles that exist? We have explored this concept with the first 3 generations of Pokemon, so in this video, we're moving on to the Sinnoh starters. If you love starter Pokemon and want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Anyway, let's get this started with the absolute cutie pie Turtwig, which I opted to give the not-so-cute Dark type. So here is Turtrid, the tiny barb Pokemon, who I once again worked with the incredible Trevenart to create, as I did with the rest of the Pokemon in this video, so make sure to check out their link in the description and show them some love. So originally Turtwig seemed to be based on the ornate box turtle, so I changed the kind of turtle it was inspired by to a snapping turtle, which originally Grottle and Torterra are based on. But instead of any old snapping turtle, I went with the large, dark, ferocious looking alligator snapping turtle. Their spiky shell and darker coloration fit the dark type and this line very well. Turtrid's name is a mix of turtle and putrid, as in something rotting or very unpleasant or repulsive, which very much describes the smell that Turtrid gives off. This scent is a mechanism to both harm and repulse other Pokemon, keeping them away from Turtrid as it prefers solitude. The only other Pokemon that can handle being around it are other Turtrid and members of its line. Speaking of, at level 18, Turtrid evolves into Rottle, the gross Pokemon. See what I did there? This middle stage loses a bit of the hard spiky shell part in favor of these large pronged spines, which are meant to not only tap into Grottle's Ankylosaurus inspiration, but add in some inspiration from some other dinos, the Huayangosaurus and the Chungkingosaurus, both of which originate from China. I definitely feel as though this stage especially gives off the dark typing, feeling like a very wicked and edgy dinosaur. Rottle used their razor-sharp claws and spines to slash and thrash through opponents. The red parts of its body seem to glow each time it defeats an opponent. This is a physical manifestation of its main ability, Moxie. Like Turtrid, it emits noxious fumes that can even be seen with a keen eye. And those fumes can fully be seen at level 32 when it evolves into Torterror, the corrupt Pokemon, a dark dragon type. The dark, ominous smog that takes shape over Torterra's shell can slither out over vast distances to corrupt and decay the land around it and the Pokemon living there. This big old mountainous shell is definitely inspired by Mount Doom from Lord of the Rings and Death Mountain from the Legend of Zelda series. Its serpentine shape in combination with Torterra's coloration and Testudine features are a reference to the black tortoise from Chinese mythology, one of the 4 symbols of the Chinese constellation representing the north. It is also known as Genbu in Japan, and both are masters of winter, the barren, cold landscape of such being what Torterra creates with its snake-like smog. I imagine that red glowing effect from Rottle is even furthered with Torterra, coming down like dark red lightning from the smoky serpent cresting its shell. If you want to support this channel even further, become a member. It helps me pay the lovely artists I work with and offers you perks like seeing videos early, your name at the end of my videos, and the Artmage tier directly pays for 1 Fakemon a month, which you receive a high quality image of and are credited for. So hit that join button, it really helps keep this channel going. I also recently started a new VODs channel, so you guys can go back and watch my Twitch streams if you missed them. Go subscribe and watch the videos that are up. Also make sure to follow my Twitch so you can see them live. From there we move on to Chimchar, which I opted to give the Psychic type as a kind of twist on the fact it becomes the Fighting type later on down the line. With that, I give you Chimstar, the chimp Pokemon. Obviously, its name comes from star, given the Psychic type is basically our Cosmic type equivalent. It also refers to the Monkey Head Nebula, an emission nebula that can be found in the Orion constellation. This jewel on Chimstar's head is also a reference to this nebula, as well as acting as this Pokemon's third eye, a common theme amongst a few Psychic-type Pokemon. Chimstar are frequently used as messengers or helpers for mail delivery, as they are quick and nimble. They can store messages in the gem in their head that can be psychically transmitted to the recipients, like a mind text. At level 14, Chimstar evolves into Montasm, the careful Pokemon, a psychic ghost type. With its new partial ghost typing, Montasm helps in a different way, trying to absorb and purify any spectral energy that may be lingering over objects or people using its tail. This refers to an object called a Nusa or Onusa, a paper-covered wand used in Shinto purification rituals. I thought a Pokemon channeling the ghost type through its use of the psychic type would be an interesting angle, especially given we have so few Pokemon with this type combo and absolutely no average Pokemon with it. Montasm's name comes from monkey and phantasm, I wanted to make it have the same cadence as Monferno, but that was a struggle to have it both do that and make sense as a name. Monfanto was the closest I came, but that doesn't really make sense in this context. Anyway, at level 36, Montasm evolves into Avernape, the Shade Pokemon. The absorption of ghostly energy from its previous stage has led this Pokemon to be of help to no one and a hindrance to all. Fully succumbing to phantasmic influence, this warped ape uses this energy to haunt its opponent's dreams and reality, blasting out shadow balls from its hands with paranormal might. The Nusa from the previous stage now makes up the design of its torso, head, and tail, with a miasma crowning the top of its head much the same as the fire did with Infernape. Avernape's name comes from Avernal, a synonym for infernal pertaining to Avernus, the ancient name for a volcanic crater in Italy that was said to be a portal to the underworld. If I weren't trying to make the names sound similar, Apparition would be a great contender for its name. Avernape is also inspired by a yokai by the name of Sarugami, a giant monkey that was said to kidnap women, the basis for many heroes to come slay said beast. It is said that the Sarugami used to be messenger gods for the sun, but the worship of monkeys reduced as technology advanced, leaving them behind to become corrupted yokai. And that leaves the Piplup line, which as you have no doubt guessed I gave the fighting type. So with that, here is Pipunch, the penguin Pokemon. Piplup definitely pulls inspiration from the little blue penguin, and the entire line is based on emperor penguins. So Pipunch is instead based on different kinds of crested penguins, as you can see with its crest that imitates a ragged ponytail. I wanted to evoke the fighting type with a more wild, rough and tumble kind of look to this Pokemon, and Pipunch absolutely oozes that energy, having markings on its chest that make it look like it's definitely been in a few scraps. Pipunch are rowdy Pokemon. It takes a very patient and stubborn trainer to handle them, as Pipunch tend to butt heads with their trainer, literally. At level 16, Pipunch evolves into Prinpunch, the crested penguin Pokemon. The rowdiness of its previous stage has been refined into a hunter's instinct upon evolution, with Prinpunch's wings evoking a cape, and mixed with the markings all over its body is meant to reference Ainu hunters and their clothing, as we know Sinnoh is based on Hokkaido. Also, its bright yellow eyes and stripes across them aptly reference the yellow-eyed penguin. Prinpunch are experts at camouflaging against rocky terrain. They inhabit the more temperate areas of Mount Coronet toward Orberg, where they hunt with masterful skill. And speaking of masterful, at level 36, Prinpunch evolves into Impammel, the Master Pokemon, a fighting rock type. Okay, now that we've made it here, I can finally reveal the pun I've been sitting on this entire time. Impammel is based on the Rock Hopper Penguin. Whew, glad that's finally out there. Felt like I was gonna explode holding that in. Impammel's name comes from Emperor, pummel as in a flurry of punches, and pommel as in the hilt of a sword, which Impammel's arms act as. Speaking of, the big old stone sword wings that it has are constantly honed. Nearly as sharp as steel, they can cut through earth and rock as if they were paper. Its design and armor are more samurai inspired, but it still has a lot of those more rowdy, wild hunter-esque features. As per usual, I implemented a few group themes between the final stages of these starters. The first is Kaiju, with Torterra being based on Gamera, Avernape being based on King Kong, and Impammel being based on Pagila, a lesser known kaiju, but it still works. The second was changing the kind of myth these Pokemon were based on, switching Torterra's World Turtle to Torterra's Black Tortoise, Infernape's Sun Wukong to Avernape's Sarugami, and with Impammel I switched it from Poseidon to the Ainu god Hasina Uk Kamui, a goddess of the hunt who is said to be accompanied by or take the form of a small bird. Actually, the other two draw inspiration from Ainu culture as well. Torterra draws from Hoyao, a swamp dragon, and Avernape draws from Nusa Kor Kamui, a messenger god for the dead and is said to be the originator of the Nusa wand. And those are some type swap Sinnoh starters. Thanks so much to our incredible members whose names you can see on screen for supporting the channel with their hard-earned money, which you can do by hitting that join button. Thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Grass, Fire, and Water have been the de facto starter Pokemon types since the very beginning. But what if that hadn't been the case? Well, we've answered that with the first 4 generations of Pokemon, so let's move on to the Unova starters. Hey everyone, Brandon here. So first up is the first Pokemon in the Unova Dex, Snivy. Wait, for real? Excuse me, the second Pokemon of the Unova Dex, which I decided to give the ground type. So here is Snert, the Sand Snake Pokemon, a pure ground type. I worked with Fungusmon for all the starters in this video, so make sure to check out their link in the description. As per usual with the new types in this alternate universe what-if situation, we need to change the names to match the types. So yes, we have Snert, which is so fun to say it has become a vocal stem. Snert, 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 Snert. Snakes can be found in deserts all across the world, so it made for an easy type translation. Snert is specifically based on the horned viper found in the Sahara Desert, which does a great job blending in with its sandy environment. As would Snert, who resides in the desert resort, hiding in the deep sands, which it does more of now that humans have become more prevalent in the area, stressing this Pokemon. At level 17, Snert evolves into Servern, the cave snake Pokemon. This Pokemon is well known for hiding out within caves, as its category implies. It serves as a protector of hordes of Snert that it travels with. The Sahara spans across most of North Africa and covers a good part of Egypt. As such, Servern has the added inspiration of Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt before the Roman Empire incorporated it as a province. Servern's scales look like a collar of Nefer amulets, which were said to bring good luck to the wearer. And on the head, the scales match the look of what pop culture knows as the Cleopatra bob, but it also is reflective of the hood of a snake, specifically the Egyptian cobra, whose black coloration has been featured more upon evolving. And that coloration is even furthered at level 36 when Servern evolves into Serperish, the divine Pokemon, a ground dragon type. Serperish evolves from referencing a pharaoh to multiple Egyptian gods. Firstly, it is based on Apep, a god of darkness and the underworld seen in the form of an enormous snake, capable of creating devastating earthquakes from its movements. Next is the goddess Wadjet, who took the form of a winged cobra. She is said to be the daughter and eye of the sun god Ra, which you can see given the sun disk above her head. Apep was actually considered an enemy of Ra given the nature of their existences, so combining these two god snakes is a form of balancing the chaos. Wadjet is also associated with the Wedjot, with the right eye representing power, fury, and Ra, and the left representing protection, healing, and another god of the sun and kingship, Horus. Looking back, you can see Snert's eye pattern refers to these symbols, and this line's green eyes resemble Wadjet's name of the Green One, which are also reflected in amulets and ceramics. Serperish's name comes from serpent and perish, as in to slowly decay or waste away, much like you would if you were trapped in a desert. Serperish are equal in the power to protect and destroy. A true force to be reckoned with if you ever encounter it in the wild, and a powerful ally in battle. And you would be my powerful ally if you hit subscribe, the like button, and left a comment down below. We are creeping up on 500,000 subscribers, so I would greatly appreciate the support to reach that milestone. On to our Firestarter Tepig, which I decided to give the Ice type, which I thought would be interesting given those types are opposites. Anyway, I give you Frippig, the Frost Pig Pokemon, a pure Ice type. As I said, Frippig is the inverse of Tepig, and so is its coloration, looking almost like you hit the invert color tool on paint. Frippig's fluffiness is based on the Mangalica pig, a form of domestic pig with long curly hair. It looks like you mixed a pig and a sheep together. It's a shig, or would it be a peep? Well, Frippig certainly makes a peep when it sneezes, which releases a bunch of slush. This is a reference to a technique for cleaning pipes called ice pigging, which uses an ice slurry to remove any sediment or any unwanted materials, just like sneezing is trying to remove viruses from your body. At level 17, Frippig evolves into Piglu, the Ice Pig Pokemon. While the name doesn't exactly match the cadence of Pignite, I felt it matched the vibe of the pun. Its name actually goes further than a good pun. There are actually wild boars that were imported to Canada that have started building piglus out of mounds of cattails, that they then burrow underneath and snow gathers atop of, hence a piglu. Once again, Piglu is kind of the inverse of Pignite. Where Pignite looks like it's ready for battle and full of fighting spirit, Piglu kind of plays into the sad loner teen vibe, with its hands in the pockets of its furry hoodie. This Pokemon's icy power is fueled by sleeping and conserving its energy. It tends to keep to itself, but with a trainer's help, it has been seen to be more social. This behavior and its ice typing are actually a small reference to seasonal depression or seasonal affective disorder, which is definitely creeping up on me with winter right around the corner. It is also said to especially affect people ages 18 to 30, which match up to the levels Piglu would be before evolving. Speaking of, at level 36, Piglu evolves into Boreal, the Mega Ice Pig Pokemon, an Ice Fairy type. Okay, so this is the first time I've pretty much abandoned the name matching the original as far as placement, but honestly, Embor is such a good name and so simple that swapping out some kind of icy or cold themed pun in there was pretty much impossible. So I decided to swap the placement to make a new pun with the word Boreal, which means a north or northern region, but can also be classified as relating to the climate zone south of the Arctic. It also refers to the Aurora Borealis, as instead of flames, Boreal has this aurora collar. Just south of the collar, we have this symbol on Boreal's stomach, which is meant to replicate the Triquetra or the Triskel, both of which have Nordic origins. The Triquetra was first discovered on the Funbo runestones in Sweden, and the Triskel, also known as Odin's horns, obviously commemorates Odin, but specifically his quest to drink the mead of poetry, Odorir. Boreal's white and gold coloration along with its aurora referred to the mythical Norse boar Gullinbursti, which was the mount of Freyr, the Norse god of kingship and peace. Gullinbursti was also said to have a gold mane that could glow in the dark. All of those elements felt very fitting of the fairy type, and with this final stage, the inversion of Embor comes to a head, with its name reversing the placement of Boar and its type combo being the exact opposite of the fire fighting type. Boreal's icy might is summoned from its chest in a colorful display. The happier it is, the more dazzling the power becomes. And for our water starter Oshawott, I opted to give it the steel type. Some astute longtime viewers of the channel may have noticed that this is the original type trio I gave to the Kanto starters, but swapped which kind of starter got which type. Given Pokemon Black and White were a soft reboot of the franchise, I thought this would be a fun parallel. Anyway, allow me to introduce Alawat, the Steel Otter Pokemon, a pure Steel type. Alawat, instead of having its iconic Scalchop, it's replaced by an Urchop. Otters eat both scallops and urchins, and the spiny nature of an urchin felt fitting of the Steel type. Alawat uses its Urchop to defend its body and the food it collects. At level 17, Alawat evolves into Pewott, the training Pokemon, a pure Steel type. Pewott use their dual Urchops to defend the weak, though it is still learning the techniques to use them most efficiently. The Steel typing is furthered in this line with Pewott's hood of fur emulating chainmail worn by European knights in the medieval period, which shines a light on where this Pokemon is headed with its inspirations. Alawat acts as a page, which were servants of knights and noblemen. Pewott acts as a squire, who was still a servant of a knight but was also trained to be one. And then at level 36, Pewott evolves into Solderat, the chivalrous Pokemon, a Steel electric type. Yep, this otter has gone from samurai to knight. You may have also noticed its type combo, which I had been hinting at with the Watt part of the first two stages' names, and the coloration of the Urchop, which is meant to emulate Pincurchin. There's another thing you may have picked up on with its typing in comparison to the rest of the final stages. Each final stage is quad weak to the main type of one of the other starters. So there, their types are balanced. Just balanced in the opposite direction of the usual. Anyway, Solderat's spiked armor is a great conductor of electricity, allowing it to flow into its enormous Storm Mace, which is created by combining its two pauldrons. The idea of an urchin turning into a mace for this line is something I felt worked so well and pretty much informed the entire concept. As far as a group theme, I actually kept it basically the same, since Unova was all about representing diversity. So the Serperish line obviously represents Egypt, the Boreal line represents Nordic countries, and the Solderat line represents the United Kingdom, or Galar in the Pokemon world. And yes, there are two representatives of European culture there, but the original starters had two representatives of East Asian culture, so I think we can let that slide. There is also a link between the European cultures, as Gullinbursti was used in the heraldry of King Richard III of England. And those are the Unova starters with different types. Thank you so much to our incredible members whose names you can see on screen for supporting this channel with their hard-earned money, which you can also do by hitting that join button. And thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you all next time. What if in an alternate universe, grass, fire, and water wasn't the type trio used for the starter Pokemon? We have explored this concept with the first 5 generations of Pokemon. So let's say bonjour to the starter Pokemon of the Kalos region and give them some new types. Hey everyone, Brandon here. So Kalos is a bit of a unique region. It was the first mainline region to not be in Japan or America, the first region of the 3D era, and the starters were a bit more blatant with their design inspirations and group theme. Like in previous generations, you could kind of get the idea of what was going on, but when you look at these three, you can immediately see, oh, those are definitely RPG classes. As such, I'm going to do something a bit different this time around and talk about the group theme for these starters at the top of the video and explain as I go. I decided to keep the RPG class theme but expand on it a bit more. Rather than just a general RPG, I switched it to a tabletop RPG, specifically Dungeons & Dragons. I am currently in 2 campaigns with another I'm starting next month, and I am so normal about it. I worked with Trevenart for all the artwork in this video, so make sure to check out their link in the description. Also, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment down below to see more videos just like this. Anyway, let's start off with Chespin, who when given the Steel type becomes Prespin, the spiky head Pokemon, a pure Steel type. Rather than the sprout-like spines of Chespin, Prespin has these longer spines, or more accurately, spikes. These spikes, as well as Prespin's name, refer to acupuncture or acupressure, which is a move it would most certainly learn. Prespin will use its quills to help other Pokemon. It will press its head against different pressure points to help alleviate stress or pain. Its sturdy, armored hide is developed from its strict diet of babiri berries. So I realized I haven't been doing something obvious for this series, which is that these Pokemon would need abilities to replace the standard starter abilities of Overgrow, Blaze, and Torrent. So let's give Prespin a Steel-type equivalent, which I have named Refine, which boosts the power of Steel-type moves by 50% when the Pokemon's HP is equal or less than 1/3 of its maximum. For its hidden ability, I would probably have it keep Bulletproof because it still fits in my opinion. Bulletproof Steel and all that. At level 16, Pressman evolves into Quillash, the spiky armor Pokemon. The spikes from Pressman have become smaller and more frequent on Quillash, which both act as an offensive and a defensive measure. It can roll itself up into a ball and roll at opponents, repeatedly striking them with its sharp and hard quills, which would essentially just be Quillash using Gyro Ball over and over. It could also be a new move, which we could call Pinwheel, which essentially would be a Steel-type version of Rollout, repeatedly attacking the target over 5 turns and growing more powerful with each turn. I know Quilladin gets a lot of hate, which I personally don't understand, but I hope this design helps some of those who had issue with Quilladin like it a bit more. And I would like you a bit more if you hit that join button to become a member. Membership gives you perks like seeing videos early, a shout out at the end of my videos, and even directly paying for one Fakemon design a month that you are credited for. So support the channel with your membership so I can continue to make fun videos just like this. At level 36, Quillash evolves into Pressnot, the Barbarian Pokemon. Yep, I'm doing it again. I made a single-typed final stage in one of these videos. Honestly, as much as I love making unique type combos for the starters in this series, at the end of the day, it's still Pokemon, and there have been 2 whole generations where all the starters have been single-typed, and 3 generations where at least one starter has been. Plus, Steel is honestly a great type by itself. It has the most resistances of any type and has great offensive capabilities, so this line would also have great physical defense and attack. Back to Pressnot though. As its category states, this Pokemon is based on the Barbarian class from D&D, which are all about getting in and doing damage. Alright, prepare yourself for a segment I like to call Brandon info dumps about their hyperfixation. Ready? Okay, Barbarian's main class feature is Rage, which basically lets you hit things harder and gives you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, which fits great given the myriad of type resistances Pressnot has. Though ironically, it is weak to fighting and ground, which would count as bludgeoning damage in D&D. I wanted to shift Chestnut from the defensive Paladin class, which is basically a tank or frontline class, to an offensive tank class which Barbarian can be. As you can see with its pose, like Chestnut, it can morph its arms, but instead of making a shield, it can make axes, which are the typical weapons barbarians use. Its blonde fur and blue eyes refer to a god of some barbarian tribes in D&D lore called Uthgar, who is very Norse-inspired as barbarians themselves are based on the kind of Vikings called Berserkers. Okay, still with me? Good, because I still have more. I actually based each member of this line off different subclasses of the barbarian you can be. For the uninformed, subclasses are a choice you usually make at level 3 that gives you access to different abilities, spells, and features depending on which you choose. Kind of like giving Eevee a different evolution stone. It changes what you can do with that character from then on. Anyway, the barbarian subclass I based Pressman on is the Path of the Beast, given, well, it's a beast. But I did change something about this line entirely based on this subclass. Rather than being based on hedgehogs, armadillos, and glyptodonts, which are all herbivores or prey animals, I changed the inspiration to be based on ancient predator animals, such as the Andrewsarchus and the Repenomamus, which you can see with this line's fangs. The subclass I based Quillash on is the Path of the Battle Rager, whose class features center around spiked armor, which you can use as a weapon by ramming into opponents or grappling them. Then finally, the subclass I based Pressnot on is the Path of the Berserker, which is your basic barbarian, focusing on the rage mechanic. For this, I would give it a new move called Relentless Rage, named after the barbarian class feature, which would act almost like Endure mixed with Belly Drum, where if used and the user was going to faint from an attack, the Pokemon will survive on 1 HP, and its attack will increase drastically. Speaking of drastic, Pressnot is probably one of the most drastic design changes I have made to a Pokemon in this video, if not this entire series. Once again, Chestnut also receives a lot of hate, and though I love the original, I can't help but find this design way more interesting. So I hope Chestnut haters do too. Yet another line that gets a lot of hate is our next starter, Fennekin. More so for the final stage though. Anyway, I gave it the Fairy type, which gives us Fennecoy, the Shy Fox Pokemon, a pure Fairy type. This Pokemon's girly pop levels are absolutely off the charts. Adding pinks and purples to this Pokemon felt like the most natural way to go for its type, given Fennekin only really has its ear fluffs and coloration to designate its typing. Its category refers to the fact that foxes tend to be more shy and quiet animals, hiding from both humans and other animals, as well as references that fairies typically will also rarely show themselves to humans. Fennecoy usually travel alone. They will leave sticks behind, which both work as a trap and as a way for it to know another Pokemon is nearby. For a Fairy-type version of Blaze, I decided to call it Bespell, and its hidden ability would be changed to Soundproof, which will make sense later. At level 16, Fennecoy evolves into Blakeson, the Blade Fox Pokemon. Instead of using its stick to wield fire like Braixen or Delphox do, or trap Pokemon like Fennecoy, Blakeson uses it as a blade to defend itself in fanciful style, keeping their opponents at a distance with its variety of versatile flourishes, which would actually be a new move called Flourish. It would act like Detect or Protect, where if a Pokemon attacks, it would miss, and would then boost Blakeson's attack or special attack stat matching what kind of move was used by the opponent. As such, I would have this line be a mixed attacker. Its dex entry, new move, and appearance are inspired by the sport of fencing, and medieval duels using swords in general with its feather-like ear fluff. At level 36, Blakeson evolves into Simfox, the Bard Pokemon. We have yet another stick alteration on our hands, folks. Move over, Pokeflute. There's a new Woodwind in town. Simfox can create enchanting melodies from its flute-like stick, charming Pokemon and people alike. This stick is carved from highly durable wood, so it can also use it as a blade still if necessary. The use of the flute, typing, and its Vulpine appearance act as a reference to a few fairy tale characters, two of which have darker endings that I will omit. First is the character of the fox from Pinocchio, called Honest John in the Disney adaptation, who would use his charm and wit to swindle townsfolk. Second is the Pied Piper, who led an infestation of rats out of the town of Hamelin with his magic pipe, which I could also see being a tale in the Pokemon world, with Simfox leading a bunch of rodent Pokemon out of Kalos. The third is Robin Goodfellow, or Puck as he is more commonly known, a mischievous fairy that was adapted into Shakespeare's play A Midsummer Night's Dream. These aspects come together to make a great setup for this Pokemon's category, the Bard Pokemon. Yet again, time for another round of info dumping. So one of the main stats used for Bard is Charisma. They use their words and music to persuade, allure, and trick folks into giving them what they want, while also having access to a decent list of spells, which makes a great transition from Delphox, who is more of a direct spellcaster like a sorcerer, wizard, or warlock. And yes, those are three different classes with an important distinction between them that I don't have time to go into right now. Simfox's and Blakeson's legs are meant to look more like the puffy legwear of the Reformation era and medieval times, also sporting a cape or tail coat, which the entire line has kind of led up to, while also acting as a reference to the same multi-tailed foxes or kitsune from Japanese folklore that Ninetales and Delphox are based on. Its ear fluff is now a full-on set of fairy wings, which really contribute to its pure fairy typing. This is the only starter where I debated on giving it a second type, due to the darker tone of the fairy tales it is based on, the mischievous look it has, and the coloration getting darker as it evolved. Also, this design is a little self-indulgent reference to Rena Rouge from Miraculous. Anyway, just like our previous starter line, this line also has different subclasses that they are based on. Fennecoy is based on the College of Whispers Bard. While the abilities of the subclass aren't directly mirrored with this Pokemon, the whole Whispers part is its main focus, which as I said represents the fact that foxes are usually shy and quiet, to the point where, in true Bard fashion, there was even a song about it. But I will spare your ears from the curses of the past. Blakeson with its new blade-like stick is based on the College of Swords Bard, but could also include the College of Valor Bard as they are both more combat-focused. Simfox is based on the College of Eloquence Bard, which is the bardiest bard to ever bard. Incredibly charming and musically talented. I would actually give this Pokemon the same move I gave to the Colossian Skeledirge we made for the Legends EA prediction video earlier this year. Check that video out if you missed it. But the move is called Charming Melody, which acts as a fairy-type version of Torch Song. Flourish in combo with Charming Melody would make for a real nightmare of a setup Pokemon, which is why its defense stats would be really, really bad, so that if you do get a hit off, this thing would faint faster than you can say Beholder. Beholder? I hardly know her. Moving on, we have the Froakie line, which you can probably guess I gave the Fighting type. With that said, here is Cloaky, the Trouble Frog Pokemon, a pure Fighting type. Cloaky is a bit of a rabble-rouser, a troublemaker if you will. It will throw the beads on its neck to make distractions so it can land surprise attacks on its opponents. Then it will sneak off before the opponent notices where it was hit from. From a design standpoint, Cloaky almost feels like an inverse of Froakie, being red and black rather than blue and white, which refers to the aptly named Tomato Frog. The equivalent to Torrent for this Pokemon would be called Underdog. For its hidden ability, I would either keep Protean or make a new similar one called something like Stylist, which is when a fighter uses skill and technique rather than brute strength. I did consider giving it a hidden ability ending in Proof, considering the other two starters did, but Heat Proof doesn't really fit. At level 16, Cloaky evolves into Frogolist, the Rumble Frog Pokemon. And this Pokemon certainly does rumble. It will start battles with Pokemon and stumble around while fighting, like it is confused or in some kind of stupor. This fighting style is a bit unorthodox, but allows it to be a slippery sidestepper, dodging oncoming attacks and countering easily. But no, it would not learn Counter. Instead, it would learn a new move called Slip, where it dodges the oncoming attack if it's physical, then counters with an attack of equal power. And finally, its evasiveness would increase. This both refers to how slippery frogs are and a term used in boxing when you move your head slightly to the side so a punch slips past you. As far as design, Frogadier already referenced a horned frog, but I wanted to make the horns a bit more forward and obvious. Also, its mustache, beard, and coloration are meant to refer to Gordon's warty frog. So yeah, those black bumps are warts, which is kinda gross, but no more gross than a tongue scarf. Speaking of, let's move on to the final stage. With a ton of different combat classes to pick from for this Pokemon, I thought, what is the most fighting type class that also feels in line with a ninja? Monk. It's a monk. So Frogolist at level 36 evolves into Grenastic, the monk Pokemon. Now that's an amped amphibian. Dude's been hitting the gym for real. On the topic of hitting, the hardened, knuckle-like warts on its hand allow Grenastic to deliver some truly devastating punches. It is a skilled martial artist, and the more beads it has on its necklace, the stronger that Grenastic is. These beads refer to prayer bead necklaces, specifically the overdramatic huge ones monks in RPGs and anime are depicted wearing. This line also references a style of kung fu called Toad Style, which has some extremely acrobatic techniques to emulate the movements of a frog. There are also yokai called Ogama that this could refer to, which are massive frogs that stand on their hind legs and sometimes wield spears, which monks in D&D can also do. Grenastic's horns are actually shaped like said spears. Okay, final round of info dumping. This one is going to be a bit shorter as it's a little easier to understand. The monk's whole deal is dexterity and using unarmed strikes, though some subclasses do focus more on weapons as I just said. So obviously a frog with its leaping ability is a great segue into a monk, especially when the Pokemon was originally based on a ninja, an already dexterous style of combat. The most commonly used ability for the monk class is Flurry of Blows, which we could definitely reference with Arm Thrust or Triple Kick, that would basically replace Water Shuriken. Though we wouldn't get the benefit of priority, so we could just make a fighting type version of that move. I also considered giving this Pokemon Technician as a second or hidden ability to help instead, but ultimately decided that Stylist would be more versatile. The subclass's trend continues with Cloaky being based on the way of Shadow Monk, a darker, less faithful version of a monk, cloaked in shadow. Actually, when you multi-class with a rogue with the assassin subclass, you get yourself a Dungeons & Dragons version of a ninja, so it refers to its original design inspiration. Frogolist is based on the way of the drunken master monk, which despite the name, you don't actually have to drink to be one. Its main class features are Drunken Technique and Tipsy Sway, which have to do with hit and run tactics and redirecting attacks. You can actually see it as little swirls on its eyelids to refer to the drunken nature of the subclass and Frogolist's movements. Finally, Grenastic is based on the way of the Open Hand Monk, which as you can guess is the most monkey monk. With that said, it actually transitions us well into the theme of all three of these starters. Each final stage is the most emblematic of their class, with them drifting further from that as you go down to the base stage. Pressman is more calm, even offering relaxation to other Pokemon rather than the raging barbarian Pressnot. Fennecoy is quieter and more reserved than the exuberant and whimsical bard Simfox. And Cloaky is shadowy, mysterious, and unattached, as opposed to the devout and direct monk Grenastic. Each line also references the upgrades we got from Kalos being our first entry in the 3D era. The Pressman line refers to the upgrade in graphics as its spikes become more frequent and defined as it evolves, like pixels transitioning to voxels. Fennecoy references the upgrade in music as it refines its musical talents across its evolutions, much like how we went from essentially MIDI to full orchestrations. And the Cloaky line represents the quality of life upgrades we got in the 3D era, such as getting EXP from catching Pokemon and super training. Much like Cloaky comes out of the shadows and becomes a better and stronger fighter as it evolves. And those are the Kalos starters with different types. Thanks so much to our incredible members whose names you can see on screen for supporting the channel with their hard-earned money, which you can also do by hitting that join button. Thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you all next time. What if starter Pokemon weren't Grass, Fire, and Water type? We've ventured through the first 6 generations of Pokemon to answer this question, so let's answer it again with the Gen 7 starters. Hey everyone, Brandon here. Alola brought some major changes to the Pokemon franchise, like the lack of a gym challenge, regional forms, and even interdimensional travel. So it isn't too far-fetched to say that maybe there's another dimension just like ours where they changed the starter type trio as well. So in this alternate dimension, instead of the Grass type starter, we have Drowlet. This little guy is known as the Frost Feather Pokemon, and as such is an Ice Flying type. I worked with Fungusmon to create Drowlet and the rest of the starter Pokemon in this video, so definitely make sure to check out their link in the description. Rather than a barn owl, Drowlet is based on the snowy or Arctic owl. While these aren't exactly found in Hawaii, neither are koalas, orangutans, or red pandas, so I think we can let this one slide. Speaking of sliding, Drowlet practices ice skating around on their talons. They're quite seclusive, preferring to stay hidden amongst the caves and snowstorms of Mount Latakila, away from the judgmental eyes of other Pokemon as they are insecure of their skills. Their ability would have to be a new one as there isn't an Ice-type version of Overgrow, so it would have to be Whiteouts, which raises the power of Ice-type moves when Drowlet's HP is low. And you can raise the power of this video by hitting that like button, subscribing, and leaving a comment down below. At level 17, Drowlet evolves into Hartrix. Its category now becomes the Blade Talon Pokemon, which obviously comes from its blade-like talons that reflect ice skates. These talons give Hartrix more control while skating around. As such, its skill and confidence have improved while on the ice. Now it's even able to perform elaborate stunts or tricks, turning its name into a double entendre. Silly kids, tricks are for owls! You can definitely see the confidence growing in this Pokemon, having more elegant feathers and fabulous hair-like plumage atop its head, all the while giving us a shy smile. And that's where its name comes from. This Pokemon has heart, a newfound courage and enthusiasm to show off its skating. It also comes from the heart of a storm, or more specifically, a snowstorm, the middle point of a storm where it's not raging as hard, a moment of respite. Much like this Pokemon is the middle stage and is a calmer, less nervous Pokemon than its previous stage, Rowlet. The original Rowlet line has a signature hidden ability called Long Reach, which could work fine as a hidden ability for this line as well, but this is an alternate universe we're talking about here. So let's have some fun with it and make a new ability which I call Short Lift. This makes opponent's stat boost last only 2 turns while this Pokemon is on the field instead of being permanent. This would proc the second this Pokemon enters the battle, so the opponent would basically have 1 turn to get it off the field or risk losing their stat buffs. The ability's name comes from the figure skating term, which means a series of dance lifts that may last up to 6 seconds. You know what else takes 6 seconds? Moving your mouse down to hit that join button and becoming a member. Membership to this channel helps me support the artists I work with for these videos, as well as getting you benefits like seeing videos before anyone else, a shout out at the end of my videos, or even helping directly fund 1 Fakemon a month that you're accredited for. So hit that join button and help me continue making awesome content just like this. At level 34, Heartrix evolves into Refrigeri. Upon evolution, it has become the Ice Talon Pokemon and becomes an Ice Fairy type. I wanted to keep the type changing at the final stage that the original line has, and this Pokemon is just glamorous as heck. Or should I say peck? Either way, the fairy type fits. In its design, you can see elements of the luxurious and sparkly ensembles worn by many figure skaters. Refrigeri glides across the Lanakila Mountains. Whether by wing or talon, it always looks elegant and graceful as it moves, looking like some kind of glimmering star in the snow and ice, a beacon for the strong to come here and for the weak to stay out. They act as an inspiration and guide for Rowlet and Heartrix who are still learning how to skate. With that said, the family gods or spirits Decidueye is based on, the Aumakua, still fit as an inspiration for this Pokemon, as they were known to watch over their descendants, instilling strength and guidance when needed. There is also the Hawaiian god known as Paupueo, an owl god which would send his messenger owls to chase out the Menehune, a race of dwarf-like people if they were getting too uncontrollable, as they were afraid of owls. Its category comes from the enormous ice talents Refrigeri now possesses, which are the basis of its new signature move, Cryo Blade, in which this Pokemon uses its icy talons to do a low sweep, creating ice underneath their opponent so they slip and are knocked prone for a turn, making them unable to attack or switch out during that time. This move has less of a chance of working each subsequent time it is used, like Protect, so people wouldn't be able to just spam it. This move refers to hydroblading, where the skater glides on a deep edge, making their body very low to the ice, making themselves almost horizontal. It would also most definitely learn Triple Axle. With the Rowlet line being my absolute favorite starter line, I have to say I really love how the Rowlet line turned out. Okay, so what possessed me to take a ghostly archer owl and turn it into a frosty skating owl? Well, that comes down to the group theme I gave the final stages of this video. The original trio had a theme of circus acts, with the Decidueye line being based on the Ringmaster and Sharpshooter acts, Incineroar being Strongman and Big Cat acts, and Primarina being clown, singing, and sea lion acts. But what I managed to boil those themes down to are acts heavily focused on precision or accuracy, strength, and endurance. You have to be accurate to be an archer, strong to be, well, a strongman, and you have to have incredible vocal endurance to be an opera singer. You know what else those are prime elements of? Olympic sports. So with Refrigeri, it is based on another act of precision or accuracy, figure skating. How precisely you land a spin or how accurately you present your routine determines how high you score. You could also say this line is based on gymnastics, because, let's be real, figure skating is basically a gymnast floor routine on ice. While precision is the main focus of figure skating, you also need to have a bit of strength and good physical endurance to make it through a routine, especially in the case of pair figure skating. Going forward, you'll find that the other lines' themes have a splash of each category too. So let's move on to those other lines with our ground-type starter, Gritton. This pure ground-type kitten is designated as the Sandcat Pokemon, which is exactly the inspiration behind Gritton, the Sandcat. This little feline is one of the smallest wild cats in the world, pretty much always looking like a kitten even when fully matured, and looks super grumpy just like Gritton does. The vast Pony Canyon is where you can find Gritton running about with that signature angry look on its face. It is often seen grooming its muddy fur, building up a ball of hairy mud in its stomach that it will later launch at opponents, which just can't be a pleasant experience to be on the receiving end of. Despite its grumpy appearance, Gritton are actually quite friendly and like to be pet, but make sure that they've groomed themselves first or you're in for some dusty hands. Rather than Blaze, Gritton would have the ability Quake, which powers up ground-type moves if its HP is low. It could also keep Intimidate as its hidden ability, as it does really fit this line, or Guts could work as well. At level 17, Gritton evolves into Terracat. Such a simple name change that makes all the difference. Beautiful. Terracat are much more fierce than Gritton. They take their physical strength very seriously and will practice smashing boulders with their head, tail, paws, and really just any part of their body they can use to attack. Bro's going for that 100% muscle mass, you feel me? Upon evolution, Terracat adds in the inspiration of the Bengal tiger, which has a much lighter and shorter coat than other subspecies of tiger, and can handle living in the more sandy or rocky areas of India. At level 34, Terracat evolves into Contendoroar. This mighty fighter is now the ground fighting type and is known as the hero Pokemon. Contendoroar use their hardened fists to deliver earth-shattering blows. This Pokemon is colloquially known as the Oko Tiger, because it knocks most opponents out with one hit. This is actually its new signature move to replace Darkest Lariat, called Knockout Punch. Rather than being a one-hit KO move, it is a base 80 physical fighting type move with the chance to put the opponent to sleep. A different kind of knockout, with a common exclamation in most combat sports being, "They put that dude to sleep!" which I felt was more fitting and less RNGE for a signature move. This line is based on Olympic boxing, keeping it more strength-based and in a ring like the heel wrestler that Incineroar is. Speaking of heel, Contendoroar is instead a hero, the Rocky-like character that we all root for to win, with its fist held high in victory. While we're talking about its fists, Incineroar had these big old paws, so we made them slightly bigger and rounded to make them feel like boxing gloves, and the stripes coming out of them look like the wraps put underneath said gloves. Instead of a fire, its tail is its belt instead, which comes together with the fur above its knees to look like boxing shorts, while also being an allusion to people with longer hair tying or braiding it to get it out of their way while fighting. It also looks like how Saiyans in Dragon Ball Z would have their tails if they were from the planet Vegeta. I can't not reference anime. It's a sickness, really. Weeabooenza. I'm pretty sure they're developing a vaccine in Japan, so I have to go there. In boxing, precision of punches are definitely also important, as well as endurance, but a bit less so if you're able to get some solid punches in so it doesn't go more than a couple rounds. Last but not least, we have our rock starter, Rockleo. This little diver is known as the Rock Lion Pokemon, and as such is a pure rock type. Rockleo can be found swimming through the lava of the Wela volcano, able to endure the searing heat with ease. It treats the volcano like its own personal pool, in which it raises back and forth from end to end faster and faster. Its tail can spin in place, acting like a propeller to increase its speed even more. Its darker, sleeker appearance is inspired by the California sea lion, which are typically darker brown in color and look very slick when fresh out of the water. It is also based on obsidian, a type of igneous or magmatic rock, which ties in well given Rockleo's volcanic habitat. Instead of torrent, Rockleo would have geostatic, which raises the power of rock-type moves if its HP is low. At level 17, Rockleo evolves into Steone. This wheelie seal is categorized as the round stone Pokemon. Steone is much more terrestrial than Rockleo, opting to race down the mountainous cliffs of Wela Volcano on the wheels it carves from the rocks found in the area. This is how it prefers to travel about, as otherwise it moves quite slow without its wheels. And this Pokemon has gotta go fast. Its name comes from stone and lion, but is also based on Orestiads or Oreads, a special kind of nymph in Greek mythology that were associated with mountains. There is even a mountainous city in Greece called Orestiada, which gets its name from them. Steone's wheels and coloration are based on two different kinds of sedimentary rock, coal and banded ironstone. With coal typically being used to make fires and ironstone having these dark red stripes, it made for the perfect transition from its fiery swimming previous stage. The Popplio line is another one with a signature hidden ability, Liquid Voice. So we would have to change that with this line as they very much aren't singers. So instead, we could give them Heatproof or Flash Fire to reference its heat resistance, or we could give it the new ability, Heat Compaction, which sharply raises this Pokemon's special defense if hit by a fire-type move, referencing how igneous and sedimentary rocks with heat and pressure become metamorphic rocks. Speaking of, at level 34, Steone evolves into Prigalina. This prancing pinniped is called the Triathlete Pokemon and is a rock dark type. Though it may not seem physically possible, Prigalina is just as fast on land as it is in lava or water. It moves at incredible speeds, using its tail to propel itself forward like a motorboat. Or a motor rock, if you will, because it's not just a boulder. This would be Prigalina's signature move to replace Sparkling Aria, called Boulder Dash, where this Pokemon sprints across the field in a backwards Z-like motion, trampling every Pokemon in battle. The heat ignited by its swift movement has a chance to burn those hit by the move. As I alluded to, this Pokemon represents metamorphic rocks, completing this line's journey through the rock cycle. Speaking of cycles, you can see the wheels of Steone's rock cycle have moved up to the visor, where you can see rubies encrusting it, which are a form of metamorphic rock, and also where it gets its dark typing, as metamorphic rocks form in the deep dark parts of the earth, as well as having a generally darker coloration. Prigalina's name comes from galena, a type of lead or mineral found within metamorphic rocks, and prix, which in French means prize. Put those two parts of the name together and it acts as a reference to the medals Olympians win. While we're on that topic, I kinda gave it away with its category, but Prigalina and the entire line is based on an Olympic triathlon, with Rockleo being the starting swimming portion, Steone being the middle biking portion, and Prigalina being the last sprint to the finish. Endurance is most definitely the name of the game when it comes to this three-part sport, but you also need to have the strength to swim, bike, and run, and be precise with your movements to not unnecessarily expend energy. Tying in the three types of rocks majorly seen in the rock cycle with the three sections of this race felt so natural to me, and having the line end with a super rare mineral and metallic ore to allude to a final victory for this Pokemon tied in so well. Trying to take a swimming Pokemon and turn it into a running Pokemon and have it look natural was definitely a tough job though, so thanks again to Fungus for making it look fantastic. And a big thank you to our incredible members whose names you can see on screen for supporting this channel with their hard-earned money, which you can also do by hitting that join button. Thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you all next time. What if starter Pokemon weren't the traditional type trio of grass, fire, and water? Let's see what that might look like with the Galar starters. Hey everyone, Brandon here. We have ventured through 7 generations of Pokemon now. Check those videos out if you missed them. But today we're moving on to Galar. So let's get started with none other than Grookey, which in this alternate timeline is the Psychic type. Creating Wookiee, the Chimp Pokemon, a pure Psychic type, who I worked with Trevenart to create, as well as the rest of the starters in this video, so make sure to check out their link in the description. Is this the second Psychic type monkey I've made for this series? Yes. Should you like and subscribe to see more videos just like this? Also yes. The stick of this Pokemon, rather than being used like a drumstick, is used like a wand for divination, which is reheating Delphox's nachos a bit, but this is different as it is a reference to Rabdomancy, using sticks to divine answers to questions or guide one's path when traveling. Wookiee will tap their stick on the ground, attuning their vibrations with their psychic power to guide them and others through caves, forests, and other areas where one could get lost. It also serves as a way to sense oncoming danger, giving them temporary precognition. This tapping warning system refers to a Coblin, a mythical gnome-like creature from Welsh folklore that would help miners find the richest veins of ore and other treasures by knocking on the walls. And yes, the word Coblin is related to the word goblin. They are also found in Cornish myth, where they are known as knockers, and this version of them would warn miners of oncoming cave-ins. Wookiee's name comes from woo-woo, which is slang that means someone who has unconventional beliefs having to do with mysticism and spirituality, but also woo as in to woo a lover, with divination practices often being used to learn the future of one's love life. It also makes it sound like Wookiee, the species of furry aliens from Star Wars that Chewbacca is, which given Wookiee is a hairy ape and a psychic type, which is basically our cosmic type, fits incredibly well. For an ability that would replace Overgrow, Wookiee would get Enlighten, which raises the power of psychic type moves when the Pokemon's HP is low. At level 16, Wookiee evolves into Tracky, the lead Pokemon. Tracky has become a bit more sagely upon evolving. Its robe-like hair can detect spiritual or otherworldly presences. The stick of Wookiee has evolved into a dowsing rod for Tracky. This is of course a key item in the Pokemon series, but traditionally it's a Y-shaped twig or pair of metal rods used in divination to find groundwater, oil, buried ores, and maligned earth vibrations, which fits right back into Wookiee's Coblin or Knocker inspiration. In this case, it is both Y-shaped and a metal rod. Tracky uses this rod to create a field of psychic energy, making it able to find rare ores and minerals buried underground within the range of its energy field. It will use the end of its rod to dig them up, or it will employ the help of a ground-type Pokemon or humans if the minerals are too deep down. This field of energy represents Tracky's hidden ability, Psychic Surge, which felt fitting given the Grookey line's hidden ability was Grassy Surge. I was thinking of giving it a custom ability, but Psychic Surge just works too well given the concept of a divining psychically powered primate. At level 35, Tracky evolves into Rillaboom, the Druid Pokemon, a Psychic Steel type. This Pokemon has used the various ores discovered in its previous stage to create a staff that it funnels its psychic power into, creating various shields to protect itself and fellow Pokemon from harm. This is represented by Rillaboom learning moves like Barrier, Light Screen, and Magic Coat. It would even learn a new move called Divine Intervention, in which Rillaboom strikes the opponent with its staff, doing 70 psychic-type physical damage, and making it so any moves used by the target are unable to do super effective damage, only able to do neutral or stab damage for a few turns or until it's switched out. If this move is used while psychic terrain is up, it gains +1 priority. I basically wanted to fuse 2 of the moves Rillaboom is known for, Grassy Glide and Drum Beating, while spicing it up with a little psychic twist. These moves are a part of where Rillaboom gets its name. It grants boons, aka gives support to its teammates and itself. These boons and the move's divine nature are another part of its inspiration, coming from Saint David, the patron saint of Wales. This line starting off with a theme of mysticism, then slowly growing more saintly, is a reference to how many pagan beliefs and celebrations were either admonished or adopted into Christianity, phasing them out or reworking their intent. Also, amongst Celtic Gauls, there were 3 types of people who were held in the highest honor: Druids, Vates, also known as seers or diviners, and bards. Though Gauls were more found in Western Europe, Celtic beliefs are held throughout the UK. With the original Grookey line being based on music, they cover bards, and with the Wookiee line, they cover druids and Vates, essentially combining all 3. Then we have a fourth kind of person held in high honor with the added inspiration of Saint David, who has a day of celebration held in his honor annually in Wales. Rillaboom's silvery hair not only refers to depictions of Saint David, but with it going down its back makes it a silver back gorilla. Ha! Get it? Harambe would have thought it was funny. And he also would have loved if you hit that join button to become a member. You get all kinds of perks for being a member, while also helping me support the artists I work with to create these videos. So go hit that join button now. Let's move on to Scorbunny, which in this alternate universe is the Dark type, creating Forbunny, the rabbit Pokemon, a pure Dark type. Its new name is indicative of its new inspiration, moving from soccer or football to golf. With 4 originally being a Scots interjection, it's used to warn anyone standing in or moving into the flight path of a golf ball. You can see Forbunny's feet are very flat. This is meant to emulate a wedge or sand wedge, a type of golf club traditionally used to get a golf ball out of a bunker or sand trap. You can also see that its ears are like golfing irons, giving the image of a couple of those clubs coming out of a golf bag. Also, you can see the collar has changed and the cheese slice has been changed to a diamond, which are elements of a golfing outfit, now looking like the collar of a button-up shirt and the Argyle pattern. Forbunny's more cocky attitude is inspired by its dark typing. It will use its wedge-like flat feet to kick up clumps of dirt, rocks, or sand up at opponents' eyes, attempting to temporarily blind them, a very underhanded and malevolent trick. To replace Blaze, Forbunny would have Vengeance, which raises the power of Dark-type moves if the Pokemon's HP is low. At level 16, Forbunny evolves into Draboot, the Drab Rabbit Pokemon. The drab part of its name refers to how this Pokemon is now a black rabbit with more monochromatic clothing, being way less colorful than its fire-type counterpart. Its spiky hair and collar refers to lionhead rabbits, who are aptly named for all the hair on and around their head. The little ring around its head when combined with the back of its hair simulates a golfing visor, but it's backwards because this Pokemon is a super edgy cool dude. Draboot continue the behavior of their previous stage, looking more aloof while doing it. They can use their feet to make burrows within the earth, where they will hide for long periods of time. If any other Pokemon tries to enter its abode, it will kick up dirt at them. With golf not being a team sport, it doesn't exactly have an equivalent to a Libero. Instead, we could give it the new ability which I call Pinseeker, which passively raises the Pokemon's chance of a critical hit by 1 stage. Yes, this is just a reskinned Super Luck, but Libero is just a reskinned Protean, so I figured it fit. A Pinseeker is golf slang for a shot that is headed directly for the hole, which is pretty lucky. So with Draboot's feet being the club, and this essentially being Super Luck, it ties in the concept of a lucky rabbit's foot. At level 35, Draboot evolves into Lunarace, the Slicer Pokemon, a dark ground type. Okay, you all saw the ground type coming, right? With all the dirt and sand talk. Anyway, this Pokemon's name and category inform a bit of its inspiration. A slice in golf is an undesirable shot with a hard right curve, kinda like this Pokemon, with its unruly behavior and dark typing making it a bit undesirable to be around. The lunar part of its name comes from the lunar rabbit or moon rabbit from Chinese myth, a companion to the moon goddess Chang'e, which you can see the moon reflected in this Pokemon's cap. That in and of itself looks like a hat known in Scotland as a bunnet, a type of flat cap which are sometimes worn while playing golf. Also, it has bun in the name, as in bun-y. The moon references don't end there, as on the Apollo 14 mission to the moon, astronaut Alan Shepard took a moment to play a bit of golf on the moon. The craters of the moon can be equated to enormous golf bunkers, though I suppose the moon is basically a singular giant sand trap. Lunarace's pose is meant to give that feeling of the slouched anime delinquent, looking to get up to no good. This is a minor detail, but with its pose switching feet upon evolving, it can refer to golfers who are ambidextrous, which can golf either right or left-handedly. To replace Pyro Ball, this Pokemon would learn the new move, Cheap Shot, where Lunarace kicks up dirt into the target's eyes, lowering their accuracy and distracting them. It then follows up on that by launching a ball made of sinister energy directly at their target's face, doing 100 Dark-type physical damage. This move is a double entendre, as a cheap shot is an underhanded remark that aims for a target's insecurity, but in this case can also refer to a golf ball being shot. From there, we have the Sableye, which in this alternate universe was given the Ghost type. So allow me to introduce Sabu, the Ghost Lizard Pokemon. With Sobble originally being based on the Veiled Chameleon, and Invisibility being its main ability, of course this line screamed Ghost type. Why the final stage never received it as a secondary type, I will never understand. So this is my way of fixing that. And fixing the final stage itself, which I am a known hater of. Anyway, Sabu is still inspired by Veiled Chameleons, but in a different way than Sobble. The veil part in this case refers to the veil between life and death which ghosts reside in. On top of that, Sabu is meant to look like sheet ghosts, which the sheet acts as a sort of veil in this case. And that's not bullshit. Also, Sabu refers to a specific type of veiled chameleon, the piebald or translucent veiled chameleon, a morph of the lizard which has colorless, pinkish-white patches with very little pigment. It retains its sobbing demeanor as it was so core to the original design, parting with it would have felt wrong. Plus, it ties into the ghost type well, being a spirit that is sad and can't move on to the afterlife, a theme present in many ghost stories across the world. Sabu doesn't have memories of its life. This makes it endlessly sad, with their tears becoming so frequent it's become a part of their anatomy. Sabu would get a ghost-type version of Torrent, which I've named Haunt, where the power of its ghost-type moves increases when its HP is low. At level 16, Sabu evolves into Mizile. Unlike Drizzile, the sadness continues in this evolution, with Mizile's name coming from miserable, as well as Mizzle, with Mizzle being a light rain, a synonym for drizzle. And that's Foshizzle. Could I have sounded more white? There's also mist in that name, as it is misty-eyed, literally, having this ghostly mist seeping from its eyes. This mist can cloud the area around it, which it will hide itself inside of, crying more and more as it makes itself and those that enter lost in the haze of emotions. Seeing as this line isn't sniping much of anything, I think it's fair to say that a new hidden ability is in order. I think Perish Body or Wandering Spirit could work, as they were created in the same generation. Either that or Cursed Body, seeing as this line is cursed with an eternal sadness, which honestly, same. As much as I would love to give all of the starters custom abilities, the original trio only had one signature ability amongst them, so ultimately only one custom ability was necessary. Anyway, at level 35, Mizile evolves into Winteleon, the Sub-Zero Pokemon, a ghost ice type. This frightful and frosty Pokemon is based on a white lady, a type of ghost found across many different myths and pieces of folklore, typically donning some kind of veil or white dress, which Winteleon has its very own veil, continuing the veiled chameleon reference. There is also a spirit known as Bryn Llwyd in Welsh mythology, known as the Monarch of the Mist, that is cloaked in a grey mist, which is where Winteleon's cloak comes from. Winteleon has resigned its previous misery, giving itself over to a solemn, frigid bitterness at life. It now intentionally creates a mist to confuse the living, trapping them within its fear-inducing fog. This is actually its signature move, Horror Haze, where Winteleon blasts their opponent with a mist of pure malice, doing 80 special ghost-type damage and creating a fog around the opponents, lowering their accuracy. Additionally, there's a 10% chance to freeze the opponents. So where does its ice type come from? Well, for that, I need to explain the group theme of these starters. They are all based on different Gaelic festivals found across Northern Ireland, Wales, and Scotland, while also being representative of those countries. Galar really swept them under the rug as far as inspirations for the most part. Yeah, sure, all of Scotland is a winter wonderland. Anyway, Winteleon is based around Samhain, also known as Calan Gaeaf or Spirit Night in Wales, which is actually the precursor to what we now know as Halloween. This festival marks the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter, hence Winteleon. Calan Gaeaf has a ghost known as Lady Wen, or the Headless White Lady, which is said to devour souls, and which is why Winteleon's neck is fairly hidden by both its veil and hand. Lunarace is based on Lufnasad, a holiday and festival to usher in the harvest season, which furthers the moon aspect of Lunarace, evoking the harvest moon. The pattern around the legs of Lunarace's shorts is meant to look like rows of grain ready to be harvested. Lufnasad is also celebrated with ritualistic sporting contests, much like the Olympics, further playing into its golf inspiration. Rillaboon is based on Imbolc, which marks the beginning of spring. It is a feast day for Ireland's patroness saint, Saint Breed. One of her symbols is known as Breed's Cross, which Rillaboon's staff emulates, with the symbol being said to protect against evil spirits and fire. Given the fact that Rillaboon's three main weaknesses are evil, dark, spirits, ghost, and fire, its signature move blocking super effective attacks references this. Which type swap starter was your favorite? Let me know. And a huge thank you to our fantastic members who go that extra mile to support the channel, which you can also do by hitting that join button. Thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you all next time. What if starter Pokemon had new types that weren't just grass, fire, and water? Let's see what that might look like with the Paldea starters. Hey everyone, Brandon here. Well, we finally made it to the most recent set of starters as of when this video comes out. I'm sad to see this series go, but let's cap it off with a bang. So first up, when Sprigatito is given the flying type, it becomes Fagatito, the Cloud Cat Pokemon. I worked with the lovely Trevenart on this design and the rest of the designs in this video. Make sure to check out their link in the description. Rather than this Pokemon's fluffy fur having a similar composition to plants, instead it has been made to look like two little sets of wings. The pattern on Fagatito's face is more like a cloud now as well. The natural waxiness of this Pokemon's fur allows it to coast on breezes, soaring through the air but a little haphazardly, as it's not as adept as bird Pokemon at flying. Its tail acts as a bit of a rudder, directing where its wing-like fur takes it. As opposed to Sprigatito, Fogatito does not prefer to be close to the sun while flying, much preferring to fly amongst the clouds. The sunshine makes the wax in their fur more loose, in turn making it even harder for Fogatito to fly. This dex entry is of course a reference to the famous tale of Icarus, the man with wings made from feathers and wax that flew too close to the sun. As we are wont to do with this series, I'll be giving each of these Pokemon an ability to match Overgrow, Blaze, and Torrent. So for the flying type we have Tempest, which raises the power of flying type moves when this Pokemon's HP is low. At level 16, Fogatito evolves into Sorigato, the wing cat Pokemon. The fur of this Pokemon is incredibly long, allowing Sorigato to make wing-like appendages out of it, allowing it to soar through the sky with incredible dexterity. It keeps itself airborne by spinning its Zephyr Top, which unleashes a mighty gale. This wind-imbued object not only looks like a little tornado mixed with a spinning top, but also acts as a reference to the Bag of Winds given to Odysseus by Aeolus in the Odyssey. You know what they say, keep your winds close but your enemies closer, which Sorigato certainly does, being able to swiftly fly straight up to opponents to attack, delivering a devastating aerial ace or acrobatics. As you can see in its design, the Puss in Boots inspiration is exaggerated a bit more with Sorigato, having them come up off the leg rather than just staying a pattern on the fur. There are a myriad of winged cats that exist across mythology, such as the Akbars or the Manticore that this can refer to, and with this abundance of fur and larger stature, Sorigato refers to a Maine Coon cat. These behemoths of the domestic cat world are known for their size and luxurious fur. Of course, other breeds of long-hair cat exist as well, such as the Norwegian forest cat or the Turkish Angora, which keeps this Pokemon's connection to Europe intact. And you can keep your connection to this channel intact by hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Also, leave a comment below letting me know which of these starter swaps ends up being your favorite. At level 36, Sorigato evolves into Meowscartier, the Vigilante Pokemon, a flying fighting type. Somebody call up Mickey, I got a punny musketeer-themed animal for him. So yes, this is a clear reference to the famous tale of the Three Musketeers, as well as the main character, D'Artagnan. The daring, roguish exploits of the group fit perfectly with the vibe of a high-flying, heroic cat. Speaking of, Meowscartier certainly has the aesthetic of a musketeer. If we zoom in a bit, okay, that's too far, let's back it up. Okay, too far, go back. I'm editing this, why do I do this to myself? This mask, while carrying over from Meowscarada, is much different in shape, and when combined with the brim of the hat is a reference to Don Diego de la Vega, also known as Zorro, the eponymous dashing and cunning vigilante. With this line also being a reference to Puss in Boots, this all is a giant reference to Shrek. Shrek is love, Shrek is life. Seriously though, Antonio Banderas played both Zorro and Puss in Boots, with the performance of the latter being inspired by the former. You'll notice that the cloud-like blade that Meowscartier wields doesn't actually have a grip or pommel. Just like Meowscarada's flower, Meowscartier wields this weapon independent of itself. This is a reference to the famous D&D magic item, the Dancing Sword, which can move and act on its own after being thrown in the air by its wielder. The way the clouds are shaped not only looks like the guard of a blade, but also like a lenticular cloud. These are the kind of clouds that are most often associated with UFOs for their round appearance. Meowscartier uses its deftness in the air to be a protector of the weak, performing elaborate yet graceful stunts in the air before landing a combo of attacks between itself and its cloudy blade. This is its signature move, Air Blade, a base 70 physical flying type attack that never misses and will always be a critical hit. Is this just a flying type version of Flower Trick? Yes, but flying type moves have a history of having higher critical hit rates, and with the inspiration behind this line, a clever hero who almost always knows exactly how to defeat their foe, it's a fitting signature move. Keeping Protean as a hidden ability for this line fits really well for the exact same reason, a hero that always has the right answer to whatever they're facing. And you would be my hero if you hit that join button to become a member. Membership gets you amazing perks like early access to videos or a shout out at the end of my videos, all the while helping me pay the talented artists I work with to make these Pokemon. So go hit that join button now! Now for our fire starter Fuecoco, which when given the electric type becomes Elicoco, the Elecroc Pokemon. Our silly little guy has become rotund. This is a relatively simple type shift, with fire and electric feeling in the same wheelhouse conceptually, so we wanted to add a little bit of a different flavor to this design, literally, as instead of being based on a chili pepper, Elicoco is based on a lemon. Sour things are often branded with an electric zing to them, and on top of that, it just makes sense from a color perspective. Bright yellow fruit plus yellow electricity equals profit. The face of Elicoco is even more white than Fuecoco, as it refers to the pith of a lemon, the white spongy parts of citrus fruit that no one wants to eat. Unless you do, I guess. I don't know, I don't want to yuck your yum. Elicoco builds up energy in its body by laying on or around electronics or power plants. It will absorb so much energy that it must be released from the small dent atop Elicoco's head. This lets out a low ringing buzz sound. The electricity atop its head can shock those who get too close to Elikoko. So, as much as you want to cuddle this round lad, I advise against it. Unless you're Ash Ketchum or Marlin. For the Blaze equivalent, Elikoko would have Overload, which powers up electric-type moves when at low HP. At level 16, Elikoko evolves into Crocilo, the Shock Croc Pokemon. While this Croc does still have some of that Calavera design in there, even adding a little bit of an Alabrije twist with its pattern, the fiery sombrero of Crocolore is no more. Instead, it's meant to look like a hard hat, and the pattern on its scales is a reference to an electrician's uniform and protective gear. The hard hat itself emulates the appearance of a Tesla coil with a ball of energy coming from the top, while at the same time reflecting a snake coiled up, protecting its egg. This refers to how many people continue to think that Fuecoco represents the snake of the Firestarter Zodiac theory, or they think it represents the bull, which the reasoning there is a bigger stretch than the character glitches in Scarlet and Violet. Like, let's be so for real, y'all, what are we talking about? The energy emitted from Croquilo's head lets off a hissing or roaring noise, leaving those who are unfamiliar with this Pokemon thinking that it's upset with them or ready to attack. Because of this, the poor thing has a hard time making friends. It's got RBF, Roaring Buzzface. At level 36, Croquilo evolves into Skelecharge, the Deafening Pokemon, an electric steel type. I know this name has Talonflame-itis, but so does Skeledirge, so cut me some slack here. You will always know when a Skelecharge is around, as with the assistance of their bird-like familiar, it will release a thunderous roar to warn others not to come near it. This is actually their signature move, Feedback, where Skelecharge releases a distorted and disruptive blast of sound at the opponent. This is a base 80 electric sound-based move with the chance to confuse the target. This signature move is based on audio feedback, which happens when a mic picks up the sound of a speaker and feeds it back through the speaker again, creating a loud, very irritating noise that I'm sure many concert goers and theater kids are familiar with. Anyway, Skelecharge's overall design and electric steel typing are inspired by the crocodile, or crocodile, a type of German locomotive named as such for their resemblance to the reptile, in coloration and in the long noses that they have. I always thought Skeledirge's cry kinda sounded like a train horn, so Skelecharge's would be much the same, with a little added oomph to really sell how loud those toot-toots can be. The burst of energy coming from the sides of Skelecharge's head are meant to emulate cartoonish depictions of a loud noise, which have this more crackly, electric appearance. The Calavera elements of Skeledirge have instead been changed to look more like the windows, lights, and metal parts seen on the side of a train. And the bright colors we used were meant to reference the graffiti that is commonly seen on the side of train cars. The bird familiar that was originally based on an Egyptian plover now acts as the horn of a train, as well as being partly inspired by the Native American thunderbird for obvious reasons. And, in concept, are like the European starling, which are known for their vocal mimicry, since this bird is mimicking a train's horn. For its hidden ability, we could keep unaware, as a train would definitely not care what stat changes your Pokemon made, it would just keep chugging. Or we could give it soundproof, as the loud roar of this Pokemon would drown out any sound made by its opponents. Obviously, with its train inspiration, Steam Engine is also a contender, but seeing as Skelecharge is inspired by an electric train, it doesn't exactly fit the concept. Last but not least, we have our stylish blue-footed booby, Quaxly, which when given the ground type becomes Quaxly, the Dirtling Pokemon. Quaxly is much less preoccupied with appearances than its water-type counterpart. It is constantly covered in mud, which it uses to push back its messy feathers out of its face, rather than any natural oils. Though the mud doesn't have a 100% success rate, as you can see with this little cowlick feather near its face. This dirt covering is inspired by dust bathing, a method many birds employ to clean their feathers and get rid of any parasites or pests when water isn't readily available. Quaxly will stomp its feet around on the ground in unique patterns to break up the dirt, turning it into mud to put on its body, and to bring out potential food that might be writhing underneath the soil. 2 birds, 1 stone. Or I guess I should say 2 stones, 1 bird. The design changes of this Pokemon are very slight, with the coloration and hairstyle being the main ones, but you can definitely see the shift from the confident, collected Quaxly into the unbothered, unkempt Quaxly. The little waves on the hair of the original have been shifted to look more like the cracks in the ground formed by severe earthquakes. And rather than being inspired by crested ducks and blue-footed boobies, Quaxly takes from the mandarin duck and the female common Merganser, both of which have this absolutely outrageous looking plumage, which definitely fits on this messy Pokemon. Quaxly would have the fittingly named ability Quake, just like Gritton from our Alola starter video, which powers up ground type moves when this Pokemon's HP is low. At level 16, Quaxly evolves into Quakeswell, the Promenade Pokemon. This dirty duck has a unique way of walking about. It will shift from side to side in large, sweeping motions, kicking up dust around it. This act is a reference to sandwalking from Dune, a way of traversing through the deserts of Arrakis without drawing the attention of the Shai Hulud, also known as the enormous and dangerous sandworms found on the planet. With Orthworm, a giant worm Pokemon that Quakespell's ground typing does nothing against, being present in Paldea, I felt this reference was extraordinarily fitting. Speaking of fits, Quakespell's thrown one, as it's meant to look a bit like the outfits worn by the Fremen, the native people of Arrakis, with their more haggard appearance working well with the messiness of this line so far. All it's missing are some bright blue eyes. But this is supposed to be a kid's game, so we'll avoid the outright reference to space drugs. At level 36, Quakespell evolves into Quaquayal, the Duchy Pokemon, a ground fairy type. Slay Queen! But like, literally. Quaquayal with its category and design are meant to emulate a Renaissance queen. More specifically, it's based on Elizabeth of France, who was the Queen of Spain and Portugal for approximately 20 years. She is the progenitor of the House of Bourbon, which is the current Spanish royal family, and her descendant is the Grand Duke of Luxembourg as well. Anyway, before this video turns into an episode of Game of Thrones, let's get back to Quaquayal. With this final stage, I can finally explain that the entire line's hair is inspired by a pomegranate. In Spain, this fruit is a symbol of abundance and victory, as it is a major symbol in the Kingdom of Granada, with it being on the city's coat of arms, and it can be seen on the national flag of Spain. The dress-like feathers of Quaquayal, while being a reference to the attire of Elizabeth of France, is also a reference to different soil layers, with the skirt being an upside-down depiction that is rounded to refer to the Earth itself. I said what I said, flat earthers. The concept of this entire line, from sandwalking to queens, comes together to reference Quakespell's category, a promenade. Those who have watched Bridgerton will know what I mean. A promenade is where prestigious and royal houses would walk about as a sign of status and to socialize. Except with this line, their promenade is a bit more obtuse, and shakes the earth beneath it with their sheer power. This is Quaquayal's signature move, Quakewalk, a base 80 physical ground-type move that breaks apart the earth beneath the target, lowering its speed by one stage. For its hidden ability, we have to go with Queenly Majesty, with this Pokemon being so Queen-inspired. Either that, or we could go with Supreme Overlord, which isn't as fitting, but does line up with Moxie, Quaquaval's original hidden ability. So when you look at these three, a flying cat, a train croc, and a dirt duck, you probably don't see much of a theme going on, but there are actually two. First, with the daring antics of Meowsketeer, the reptilian monstrosity that is Skelecharge, and the royal presence of Quaquaval, we have the literary trope of the hero, the dragon, and the princess. And speaking of literary references, each of these draws inspiration from a book of the past, present, and future, which ties back into Scarlet and Violet's core themes. Obviously, Meowsketeer is the past with the Three Musketeers, and as I said, the Quaquaval line pulls from Dune, a book set in a futuristic universe, but that leaves Skelecharge as the present with Lyle Crocodile. Okay, look, I know it's a meme, but seriously, it's a singing crocodile and it fits. And those are what the Paldea starters might look like with new types. Thanks so much to our incredible members who go that extra mile to support this channel, which you can also do by hitting that join button. And an especially big shout out to our art mages Living Lava, Bailey Pennington, and William Hartya. Thanks so very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.